What is going on, everybody? It is Friday afternoon here in Southern California. It's Friday evening over there on the East Coast, and somewhere it might even be Saturday morning. But no matter where you are, you know what time it is. It is time for Cinema Crusaders, that show where we talk about movies that are at least 10 years old and try and bring them to a new audience for all of you out there. So, before we do that, I will say that once again, we are joined by our special guest who will be here through at least the end of October. Maybe he'll be here longer if he's willing, but we'll see. But we are doing something special today. We had originally intended to officially kick off our scary season of October, with October coming up. But with Robert Redford's passing, we decided to pay him tribute and do a review of one of his movies for you today. And Mike picked the movie today, who is our guest, and I will be introducing him in just a second. He has also picked our next horror movie as well. But we are talking about none other than The Clearing, a movie from 2004 starring Helen Mirren, William Dafoe, and Robert Redford, among many, many others. So before we get into the movie itself, I want to introduce my fellow Cinema Crusaders. So he is an honorary Cinema Crusader right now. I am talking about a man who is an author. He currently has the book The Dread out, available on Amazon. He is also a writer of comic books through Omen Revelations, or he's going to kill me now. He's going to have to correct me when he comes on. He also is the sponsor and the driving force behind Omen Tabletop Gaming and the Circle of the Seven Dice. I'm talking about none other than Mike Nunnally. How you doing, Mike?
Hey. Glad to be with you, man. This is fun.
How much did I screw up the name of the of what was going on? So
well, just to clarify, there is Omen Publications, which used to do comics and now does novels and novellas, and there is Revelation Publications that used to do comics and now does novels and novellas.
Okay, so there's two, and then we have the Omen Revelation podcast, which is a combination of the two.
Yes, that's when me and Steve get together and talk about stuff and break things down.
All right, very cool. Very cool. And so speaking of Steve, our second Cinema Crusader here for this movie is also an author and a writer. He's an educator, and he is also the editor on The Dread, and he wrote the foreword to my horror novel, The Long Game. I'm talking about none other than Steve Shadewing Sellers. How you doing, Steve?
Doing pretty good, and I would have to say that's like the ultimate crossover between us. the fact that I've contributed in some way, and actually I've done a forward for Mike too. So
he did the forward.
It was an honor. It was an honor to do those.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And,
all right.
And just as a little comment on your opening thing there, I would gladly join the crew.
Well, I was going to save this for the end of October. But I think that you fit right in here as Cinema Crusaders, and I don't want to speak for Steve, but I think we would be happy to have you as a Cinema Crusader going forward if you would like to join us. So consider the invitation offered, and I hope you will accept. So
I do. Sounds awesome.
All right.
I'd love to be part of it.
All right. So then that means I'm going to have to do a new intro video, but hey. That's all right. Meanwhile, yes, I hear you, Kat. You're okay. All right, let's get into this movie, The Clearing. Real quick, before we do that, I want to go around the horn because I'm going to kick it over to Mike and then take this cat out because he's dying. Robert Redford passed. I forget how old he was. I believe he was in his 90s. He has had a long and distinguished movie career. He obviously also created the Sundance Film Festival, which has been huge for a while. And I wanted to go around the horn real quick and give it to each of us to talk about our favorite Robert Redford moment or Robert Redford movie. And it could include this movie as well if you want. So I'm going to kick it over to Mike, and then I'm going to take out Ripper the cat before he takes out my camera. So over to you, Mike.
Okay. I will say honestly that I don't have a ton of Robert Redford experience. Most of my recent experience with him has been in the Marvel universe. So I don't know.
That's perfectly legitimate, though.
Yeah.
You know? What's wrong with Marvel movies?
I certainly enjoyed him in that, and I enjoyed him a lot in this as well. But
okay. Outstanding. Steve, what about you?
Marginally better, to be honest. Robert Redford he's one of those actors that's heavily respected, but like his films were always kind of things that were not really in my shall we say my wheelhouse, and so I haven't seen a lot of them. I will point out a couple things. Yeah, he was great in Captain America: The Winter Soldier. No question about that. I always thought he should have been the Red Skull the whole time. Like that character should have been the Red Skull all along. And I think the movie would have been better for it. But I will say also, one thing that he did that probably not a lot of people know is he was actually in an episode of the original Twilight Zone.
Yes, he was.
Nothing in the Dark. And he played Death.
Yep.
Called Mr. Death. Mr. Death.
At this point, I'm starting to wonder who
shook hands with himself the other day. It looks like it. So.
Who at this point was not at least on a episode of the original Twilight Zone?
Back in the day, nobody. Back in the day, nobody. Like there was any actor from the golden age of Hollywood has probably been on there at some point or another, except for like a few notable standouts.
The only one I can think of off the top of my head. Well, there's quite a few Star Trek people, but I don't think Leonard Nimoy was ever on an episode of Star Trek.
Yeah, he was.
Was he?
Yeah,
of course he was. Of course he was.
I want to say Quality of Mercy was the episode, but I do. He was there. So was George Takei.
Wow.
Leonard Nimoy got around as an actor before Star Trek.
Yeah, and Shatner obviously with 920,000 feet. Yeah.
Yeah, Shatner was on like almost a regular. It seems like on Twilight Zone. I mean,
yeah, he did a couple of pretty noticeable ones. Nick and Time as well.
I only saw the one aboard the plane.
Mm-hmm. Most people have. It's a classic. I mean, it's Richard Donner, it's Richard Matheson, it's Shatner at his best.
Well, we will get into that another time because if we start talking Twilight Zone, I just won't talk about this movie. We'll just change it to Twilight Zone.
Yeah, just to bring it back, I will say like Redford is really, really good in that episode. Really, really great. And it's basically he's just playing this dude that the main character nurses back to health. Because she's been a recluse trying to keep death out of her life. And he has to resort to this to finally get her to end her life. And it's one of those, it's like before Neil Gaiman version of death, there was still the idea of death as being peaceful, as serving a purpose, that kind of thing.
It reminded me of that movie that starred Brad Pitt as Death. Was it Mr. Black or something?
Yeah. It's not Meeting Mr. Black, but it was something like that.
Yeah. I will say Robert Redford was also in a couple episodes of The Outer Limits, and he was good in that. My favorite movie of his, and I agree with you, a lot of Robert Redford movies seem to be very elevated. I don't know what that says about me, that I was kind of like, okay.
True fact. I slept through Out of Africa when I was really young.
Yeah. I did like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, though. So
I do want to see that. That is on my would like to see one day list.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. Paul Newman was really good in it. I also enjoyed it when he hooked up with Paul Newman again in The Sting, another really, really cool movie. So those are two movies I enjoyed of his quite a bit. So let's get into this movie. So this movie, The Clearing, came out in 2004, and it is based on a real-life kidnapping and murder of a Dutch businessman named, holy mackerel, am I going to try and butcher this name? Gerrit Jan Heijn? That sounds right. Took place in the Netherlands in 1987. This movie, gosh, it sounds so stereotypical to say it's a slow burn because it's really not burning towards anything in particular. I think that it is a movie that is very deliberate in what it is doing, and what it is telling the story of a man who is kidnapped by a former employee, and then the heartbreak and angst that his family, specifically his wife, goes through as they are trying to determine, is he still alive, whether they should pay the ransom. There's a whole host of things going on, and eventually his son and his daughter, who he was getting to know better, he had been estranged from them, come back, and this whole dynamic is going on. I think it's kind of unclear as a movie what the exact timeline is in the movie, and I think it's done on purpose. But long story short, the wife ends up paying the ransom, and they find out that he was murdered. He was already dead. But the person who kidnapped him and killed him, this will be a question I'll have for both of you towards the end, but he does some stupid things that gets himself caught. And the FBI agent actually asks him, did you want to get caught? And I think he did. But I'm going to ask that question at the end for both of you, and we can discuss that. So that is the basic plot of the movie. But I want to go around to each of you because I know that Mike definitely has some thoughts on what this movie is. I'm curious to hear what Steve's thoughts are. And I have my own thoughts on what this movie is. Because they describe it on Wikipedia as a crime thriller. I don't think this is a thriller at all. There is a crime involved, but I think the crime is the least important part of the movie, to be honest with you. But that's what I would think. And I'll get to myself after I go to, Mike first. So Mike, what do you think of this movie? What is this movie about to you? And what is going on here?
Well, I suppose I should start with this. I am taking this knowledge from what I know about when serial killers attempt to make their first kill, how the experience goes with that with them. And I'll be honest with you, I did not pick this up my first time through. I didn't catch this story through the movie until my second time through. And ultimately, I think this movie is about William Dafoe's character, who we know is a bad guy because he's Dafoe.
Right.
Is actually that the whole thing is about his first kill. And I mean, he describes what he went through and how he goes about it. And then it's not just the first kill, but then his response to it. And I think that the Robert Redford and the family stuff is just to draw emotion on how much guilt he's feeling about what happened.
That is very interesting. It kind of fits in with some of the stuff that I was seeing at the end. In fact, it fits in very, very well. But I will get to that when I talk about what I saw in the movie in a second. Let's go over to Steve. What did you see in this movie? What do you think this movie is all about?
I think that is an interesting theory, and we can definitely talk about that. I think that there is some definite something to that. I'll talk about what I see narratively, which is there are two main lines that this movie follows. One is that they're following the husband and the kidnapper and their sort of involvement as they're walking each other, through the forest and, basically kind of unpacking each other. And I think that that's probably the most compelling part of the movie because I tend to agree. I think that the Dafoe character is really the standout here. But then it's Willem Dafoe, and he's opposite an acting legend, Redford. I mean, that's the kind of meaty stuff you want to see. And
don't forget
that part doesn't
Helen, at all. Helen Mirren is no slouch in the acting department.
No,
either.
She's not. She's fine, and she's very good. In fact, the other that is the other through line is the Helen Mirren story, where she kind of finds out about what's going on, like trying to make that decision. Do we pay the ransom or not? How well do I truly know my husband? It also becomes like a big recurring thing. Is she's kind of unpacking her life with him. It's kind of like her life with him flashing before her eyes in many respects, and she's also having to deal with her family who didn't have the closest relationship with their dad because he was a workaholic. And on top of that, there was the affair in his background, all these kinds of things that, sort of complicate things. And I will also add, in addition to Helen Mirren, there was one really cool casting choice that I found out. And that is the guy who plays Robert Redford's son in this movie is the same guy who is Gentleman Dick Maltasanti in Many Saints of Newark. And
cool.
And that is really freaking awesome. He's very good as well. Yeah, I actually like that one a lot. Like I'm not like a massive Sopranos fan in the sense that I haven't seen every episode, but I do like it though. And I did enjoy the prequel story with it. So yeah.
Is that like a father or uncle or something to the Chris Moltisanti character on The Sopranos?
That's Chris Moltisanti's dad, who is Tony Soprano's mentor.
Okay.
I just want to say, if you haven't seen The Sopranos, you need to watch that shit. That is one of the best television shows ever made.
I have watched all of The Sopranos. I haven't watched Many Saints in Newark. So, just to go on a tangent on The Sopranos, the problem I had with The Sopranos, and I had to take breaks every now and then, is that here are these guys that are doing some truly horrible, horrible things, and I found myself liking them, a lot of the time. It's a weird place to be. It's like the TV show Lucifer, where I'm watching this TV show Lucifer, and he's a bad guy, but he's utterly likable. And it was just like, I've got to turn this off right now. So,
As Steve can testify, I love villains.
Yes.
Like that guy lives here.
It's crazy how that can happen. But once again, another tangent we could go down. But I want to go back to this movie. So I definitely like.
This is definitely a movie where the villain is definitely the star of the movie. So that does kind of bring it back around.
I do want to can I comment on something Steve said real quick?
Absolutely.
With the family connection there, I noticed that towards the end there, each kid had a scene where they dealt with or came to peace with the loss of their father, and at the very end, the movie ended with when she's looking up at this, she's imagining him, right, and he says, "Do you love me? Then I have all I need." That was her coming to peace with it. Mm-hmm. So that's a very valid, totally point, big point in the movie as well.
Absolutely. Now, I want to go back to what you were talking about with him being a serial killer. The more I think about the movie, that makes a lot of sense, or at least he is fantasizing. Maybe he is. I actually like that idea a lot because he is working himself up to this kill. And I think that, if I put this in context of what I saw in this movie that we really have this is the examination. It's a character story on two different men, Robert Redford's character and William Dafoe's character. And then Helen Mirren is on a journey of discovery and then eventually coming to terms with who her husband was, what their relationship was, and acceptance of, all of those things together. And part of that, Helen Mirren's journey, is that confrontation with the woman that her husband had an affair with or was having an affair with.
She's going literally through the stages of grief the entire time.
Correct. But with Robert Redford and William Dafoe, both of them are in different stages of dissatisfaction with their lives for different reasons. William Dafoe's character, is dissatisfied with his family life, his home life, his professional life, and he's putting a lot of blame in all sorts of different places. However, when you talk about him as a serial killer, I think that he is supremely unhappy, and you can see it now that you have mentioned it, that he is fantasizing about this thing that is going to bring him happiness, and he's saying, to himself that the reason he's doing this all is to get the money to try and save his marriage and go away to a hot place and take his wife with him and all that other stuff. But I think that what this is all about is the fact that he's just unhappy, and he thinks that this will make him happy. And then on the opposite end, you have Robert Redford, who has had business setbacks and everything. He's had the affair. I think he has guilt over it because I think he's fundamentally he is a decent person, a moral person. He wants to reconcile with his children. And I think he's carrying all of this around. And so these two come together at this moment, and then they go on a journey. And that's what this movie is symbolizing. They're going this journey up into the woods. And as they go, Robert Redford is coming to epiphanies, and William Dafoe is coming to, keeps trying to rationalize what it is he's doing and lying to him, not to himself, but to Robert Redford about what is really going to happen. And Robert Redford knows what's going to happen. And eventually Robert Redford calls him out, his character calls him out on his bullshit. And there's a struggle, and eventually William Dafoe kills the Redford character. And then we get to the end of the movie where I don't think that the one kill and the achievement of that kill and getting the ransom money did anything for Dafoe. I think he realized that his life was still the same shit, that his wife, he was in if not a loveless marriage, a boring marriage at this point, living with his father-in-law, and that none of this was going to happen. And so he had two choices. I think, and I would love to hear what you guys have to say, I think Dafoe took, and we'll get to that question, I think Dafoe took a left turn and decided to do the stupid thing with the bills in order to be caught, because he realized that it was either that or stay in the situation he was currently in. And, I think there's legitimately, he could have potentially become a full-time serial killer and or kidnapper. So curious what you guys think about that. Mike.
Okay. I feel like maybe I was unclear. Mm-hmm. I was using the experience because I've read a lot about serial killers, and I know the experience that they go through when they take their first kill. But I was not saying that William Dafoe was a serial killer, just that he had to kill Robert Redford, and this was about working up to that first kill. So that experience, I think, is the same, serial killer or otherwise.
Right.
Working up to that first kill.
But I think he fantasized about it. I think he had to know about it at some level because Robert Redford called him on it. I mean, who's he going to fool with that fake mustache that he put on while he's allowing himself to be seen and everything else? I think it's pretty obvious that, and I think Robert Redford's character knew this almost from the beginning, that he wasn't getting out of this alive, because Dafoe's character had no choice but to kill him.
I'm going to have to disagree with you about Dafoe at the end there. I don't think he was, like, particularly at the end when what did Dafoe say to him before he killed him? I can't let you go. That tells me letting him go was something he was actually considering at that point. He had reached the clearing, the place where he had planned on killing this guy, and he was struggling with being able to pull the trigger. And when he was talking to him, he was talking as much to himself. I can't let you go. I have to do this now.
Right.
But
I see what you're saying. Go ahead.
Go ahead there.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I see what you're saying. I guess I see in that line, though, where he says, I can't let you go, is that he's saying, is acknowledging that he always intended to kill him up there in the clearing. Mm-hmm. He has reached a point where he's decided not to do it, but then he is trapped by events of his own making. He's once again created the situation where, it's his own downfall. So whether he intended to go through it or not, whether he ever thought it was serious or not, he is now the thing that he at least contemplated on some level before he got into this whole mess, which is a murderer. So
I will also say that I think that his motivations were twofold. He talked about he worked for 17 years at this job. Mm-hmm. He fell for that whole line of, we're going to have security and retirement and everything will be fine. You just stay with us and it didn't work out that way for him. And he was really kind of bitter about it. Had been sitting around being bitter about it for 8 years, it sounds like. So my thing is, you notice that he said he was at the place Redford worked at for 3 months before Redford left. So Redford, right. Basically, as far as he's thinking, Redford was at the same place I'm at. He made it. Everything's working out fine for him. He didn't pick him out randomly. He picked him out as vengeance because he represented the failure he ended up being because it did not work out for him. That American dream of having his wife float in the pool while he's going off to work didn't happen. The promises didn't work.
No, I agree with that. But I think that goes back to what I was saying, and I'm going to go to Steve right now. But the point I was trying to make was that he thought that this kidnapping, we can debate whether or not he intended to murder them or not, or, if that was always a plan. But he thought that this was going to fix his life, that this was going to give him that thing that he was missing, and it didn't.
Destroyed him instead.
Yeah. Yeah. So Steve, what do you think about all this? What do you think about these ideas that Mike and I have been kicking around? Where do you think Defoe's character's head is at?
I think that you're on the right track with this. I'm kind of leaning to the idea, and I do remember the conversations where Redford figures out pretty quickly that this is not a guy who is a killer at that point. Like he figures this out. I mean, especially it's like, yeah, what are you going to do with that gun? And he, it's like, I went and shot and did some hunting and on the range and whatnot. And it's just like, yeah, you're just trying to convince yourself you're a badass. And I think Redford kind of sees that. But at the same time, he does have, I think what makes him dangerous is more the idea of him seeking vengeance, that this is a personal thing to him. He blames Redford for basically having the life he's always wanted, and feels that it was taken away from him because of the loss of his job and all of that, the layoffs. And Redford kind of sounds like very unapologetic for that. And I think because of this, you could definitely tell that he's walking a tightrope. And, so while, I kind of feel like he kind of realizes, I have no choice but to kill this guy. But I think he's kind of like conflicted about it. It's like, it's one thing for him to imagine and idealize this about killing a man, and another for 8 years, and another thing to actually be confronted with him and saying, do I want to kill him? And he's trying to talk himself into doing it. And in the end, he does, as we see. But I think for Redford's part, I think it kind of starts thinking, maybe I can find a way out of this. Maybe I can come up with something clever and I can get away from this guy. And he does seem to try that. And eventually, I think a lot of it for Redford is him essentially making peace with his life before it's over. He's having, basically to say goodbye to everything because he's going to lose it all. Everything that didn't matter to him before matters to him now. His wife and his kids. That's all he cares about at that point. And so I think so we're seeing two very different journeys by Redford and Defoe, and that I think is the heart of the movie.
And I think the journey up the mountain, I want to say that it was a device. I mean, I think that the writer and the director are using it as a device to show these two journeying. They're struggling. There's times when it's, they fall, they stagger. The two of them are journeying through life together. And then at one point, their lives go two separate directions. One life ends and the other goes, off the rails, I would guess. I would hazard. I think it's fair to say. I have a question for both of you that just occurred to me.
I want to ask Steve something about what he said. Something you said real quick.
Mm-hmm.
William Dafoe's character said that he imagined it millions of times, but I think the really important part of that sentence was because it was, how do you get yourself to do something that is completely out of character? You imagine it, you go over it a million times in your head. I think that's a really important point there.
Yeah, because he's trying to talk himself into doing this thing that he's never done before, and he still has doubts about.
Yeah.
So I have a question for both of you. I'm going to start with Steve. As we were talking about this, one line or one moment stood out to me. There's a time when Robert Redford has finally had enough, and he lays into William Dafoe's character. And William Dafoe points the gun at him and loses his temper and says, "You have no right to talk to me like that." Do you think that if Robert Redford's character had gone a different way and had not confronted him and basically called it as he saw it, that he would have died? He would have been murdered. Steve?
I think he would have been murdered either way.
Okay. Fair. And I see Ahsoka Tano has joined us for the discussion. So
Yes. Well, she seems to think that he would have died either way too, and because it ultimately, though vengeance was part of his goal against the idealized Robert Redford character there, I think that he wanted the money to get that dream, and then it ended up just destroying him instead of giving him the dream.
Okay. So now that you both answered that question, that leads right into the follow-up question I have, which is, why did Robert Redford decide to provoke a man and speak what I'm going to say is truth right to a man's face who is holding him at least for ransom, if not taking him to be murdered? Steve again, and then I'll go to Mike.
That is a very tricky question. He might have felt like he was cornered. He might have felt at this point like, you know what? If I'm going to die, I'm going to go down being myself and being true to who I see myself as. And I think that there might have been a bit of this. I don't see that him. He may have realized as well. It's like, I'm going to die either way. And I think that at that point, it's like, at that point, what the hell?
So we'll call that the 0 F's theory. So
yeah.
0 F's to give. Mike, what about you?
I think it can be summed up in one of Robert Redford's lines and the note that was given to his wife.
Okay.
Knowing that she loved him was all that he needed.
Fair.
You take that into consideration and then listen to his line. She will never look at me the way she did 50 years ago, and there's nothing I can do about that. Maybe he felt like he deserved to die. Maybe he wanted to die because of what he did to her. Maybe it had so hurt him that he did that to her.
Yeah. You're dealing with two people with deep guilt issues and who have both done horrible things.
Do you think now that's an interesting point you bring up, and for everybody out there watching, thank you. I see that there are quite a few people watching live right now. This is a little different, and I'll say usually when we do movies, we break it down by the cast, we break down the set design, a bunch of stuff. This movie is really a dramatic piece. There are three main pieces, Helen Mirren, but really the two main moving pieces for most of the movie are William Dafoe and Robert Redford. So we're really talking about, here about the guts of this movie, what this movie is about, because I think that's what this movie is supposed to do is evoke discussion. Invoke. Yes.
Evoke. Yes.
Yeah. So William Dafoe's character calls out Robert Redford at one point on his deception, about the fact that he was cheating and everything. I once again go back to this idea that these two men are on a journey on their life. But the one thing that struck me is that if you guys will recall, at one point, Robert Redford, there's a scuffle and Redford hits his head and cuts himself open. Rang. Right. And he sees a vision of his wife. At that point, I really got this imagery that almost like his life is flashing before his eyes. I'm not going to say he died at that moment because, according to the movie at least, he dies later on by being shot. There's no official police report or anything that I know of that can verify that. We just know that he died. But I get this idea that his life flashes before his eyes, and I get this concept that Redford is coming to terms with everything that he did in his life, what was most important in his life, as you were mentioning, Mike, and you were mentioning, Steve, and what it is his life was about before he exits it. It's kind of like that stereotypical thing that we talk about where literally your life flashes before your eyes. You have that moment of clarity. So what do you think about that versus William Dafoe's journey as well? Because I keep going back to this idea. I can't get past it. The more I think about this movie, I think there's a really deep message here about these two men and their life's journeys. Almost, I want to say it's almost on a metaphysical level. So, Mike, first, what do you think?
I guess I hadn't really considered it on that level before. I think though I did ultimately agree with that a sort of a life flashing before his eyes things with seeing his wife. I think that he was definitely coming to terms with he had this idea of all these things that were important to him, and ultimately the one thing that really gave his life meaning and importance was his wife.
Okay.
As far as William Dafoe's character, there are two types of people. There are those that are willing to fail doing the right thing, and there are those that are willing to do the wrong thing to succeed. William Dafoe falls into the first character and tried to be the second character, and it broke him. So it didn't matter what it solved.
So are we saying that through cruel chance or maybe the harsh whims of Tamora, that evil bitch, that William Dafoe's character is a born loser, that no matter what was happening, he was going to get the short end of the stick?
I'm
not saying that's wrong. I'm being very harsh, but
not necessarily. Not necessarily. No, I don't think that it was a destiny thing. I just think that he had this plan that involved getting back at someone who symbolized everything he hated about his life, and getting this ideal life for his wife and his family.
Okay.
And it didn't work out anything like he thought it would. You saw him. He can't, just laying in bed. He's constantly he can't even sleep well. It's just eating at him. It's consuming him. And he definitely gave himself up willingly. He tried to get caught.
I don't think that we have enough information. I'm going to go to Steve in a second to really make a determination. And I think you're right on what was the course of William Dafoe's life, especially since most of what happened in his life is based on his own telling. And I don't know that William Dafoe's a particularly reliable narrator. The timeline is not reliable on purpose. However, I can imagine in my own headcanon that William Dafoe is one of those poor individuals that's born under a bad moon, and like, no matter what happens, if it's, things are going to go the wrong way for him. So still doesn't absolve him of his choices, which he made, but I don't know. For some reason, I got that feeling. But Steve, same question, and then if you want to expand on anything we were talking about. So,
yeah, I think these two are shadowy reflections of each other. They have weird things in common, despite their obvious difference in status and achievement. They want the exact same things. They want success, wealth, all of these things. The beautiful life, the beautiful wife, kids, everything. They're both chasing the same basic dream. The thing is, one succeeded, the other one didn't. And we see the effects that success has in destroying people. Redford's success alienated him from his family, drove him into an affair that really damaged his marriage. And and he's been spending all the time since, kind of realizing at the end that it was all a waste of time, and that what really mattered to him was the love of his wife and his children. With Dafoe, what we're seeing is he is driven by hatred. He's not driven by love, in opposite to Redford. He's somebody who is all he sees is vengeance and the opportunity maybe to make the money that he'd always wanted to have for himself. So he's also chasing, the same things. The difference is that I think Redford saw before it was too late what really mattered, and Dafoe wasn't able to do that. All he saw was ambition and hatred and just things like this that ultimately didn't matter. And what didn't he care about? What was right in front of him? His family. He had a father-in-law. I mean, he has his wife and his children. And none of them matter to him. He doesn't think about what his quest for vengeance is going to do to the people around him. He puts no thought into this. And so, in the end, they even though they clearly seem to want the same things, their choices drive them in different directions, and in both in ways that are damaging. The only difference is one was able to stop himself and put the brakes on before the end.
So before we wrap this up with our closing thoughts, I have, to borrow from Douglas Adams and Dirk Gently. I may not know where I wanted to go, but I've ended up where I needed to be. So we have gotten, I talked about that metaphysical journey and the journey of two men. And as you were both talking, it kind of crystallized in my mind. So I'm going to leave an image. I'm going to describe something, an image to you, and then I want to get your reactions to it, and then we'll do our closing thoughts. We've talked a lot about Redford and Dafoe here, about their motivations, about who they are, about their different paths, and then what their ultimate fates were. Do you think it's a coincidence that William Dafoe is dark-haired, is not classically handsome? He lives in a rundown, house or apartment, and with a wife who is not Helen Mirren, versus Robert Redford, who is wealthy, golden-haired, handsome, well-spoken, has a handsome son and very beautiful son and daughter, a beautiful wife. That imagery of the golden path and the dark path. Do you think that was intentional by the director or just happenstance? So I'm going to go to Mike first.
Dark path and the light path. That's interesting. I suppose I can accept that as a view of the movie. I don't know that I saw it necessarily in that particular light, but that is certainly interesting. I think ultimately, while William Dafoe's character expressed a need because his claim was his issue was he was going to work while his wife wasn't swimming in a pool. That's what he said. But I think his issue was interior. His issue was more about where things ended up for himself and less about his wife. And that's why, like Steve said, that part wasn't necessarily considered afterwards. It was all about once he actually did it, he realized the weight and the cost. I don't see them. They can be light and dark paths, but I mean, I don't see Robert Redford as having necessarily redeemed himself. He merely saw where he had made his mistake.
I'm not saying that the character redeemed himself. I'm talking about, I guess, the imagery used the director to show where ultimately the two characters ended it up. So, Redford ends up acknowledging what is going on and finding some semblance of peace before he dies, which through his note, he manages to pass on even to his wife. Versus Defoe's character, who knows what it does to his wife when she finds out that her husband has been arrested, but he's obviously not found peace and has gone down. In that sense, I would say the darker path. I guess that's what I was getting at. So,
well, in that particular sense, that was definitely the case. You'll notice that before the event, we saw his wife. He interacted with his wife. We saw the rest of his house. After the event, all we saw was him in bed, and the back was even blurred with her being in bed next to him. Everything had shrunk to have been about what he had experienced and what he was going through.
Interesting. Very interesting. Steve, what do you think about all that? And then we're going to do some closing thoughts here.
Yeah, I think there probably is an intentionality behind it. I mean, there usually is an intentionality behind most filmmakers' decisions. And I think, I'm kind of reminded of what someone had told Redford at one point. It was a director that he had worked with. I forget what his name was. But he said, look, there is no way that Robert Redford could ever play a loser. And Redford is like, yeah, I could play a loser. And he said, look, have you ever struck out with a girl in your whole life? And his answer was no. Then no, you cannot be a loser because you don't know what that's like. Right. And I would be not surprised if that was exactly what Redford was cast. Who do you cast for somebody who had the perfect life, or outwardly, a successful businessman, with a beautiful wife and two wonderful children? Who do you hire for that? You hire a guy like Robert Redford.
Well said.
So there was absolutely an intentionality behind it. And you get to play the creepiest guy in the world, Willem Dafoe. It's perfect. It's just perfect casting. They knew what they were doing.
And I'm always, cautious to read too much into stuff, and I don't want to get all artsy fartsy all the time. I don't want to. Sorry, Steve. I don't want to go all English teacher where we're ascribing ideas and motives to authors when the author just happened to be hungry
as an English teacher. I think that's wise. I don't like reading too much either. That's when you get really bizarre theories. No, I agree with that. My feeling is if there is enough evidence to support that point of view, and we know that, then that's one thing. But yeah, it is entirely too possible to reach too far with theory.
Yeah, definitely. Some of my favorite stories, though, are about some of the interpretations, of different things from English teachers. So, but we'll save that for another day. So
I
I'm
just gotta
sure
say, for me, analyzing the story is a major part of the fun of experiencing a story for me.
right.
Yeah.
Quick story though, I will tell you I don't know if I've told you this story before. When I was at West Point, we had to analyze this poem for one of our classes, and we did the whole analysis and wrote it up. And one of my good friends ended up failing his analysis of the poem, and the actual poet came in to read her poetry and talk to us about it. So of course, and our teachers were all telling us that this poem about her making a salad and everything was all about sex, and all the stuff was sex, and just sex. So my buddy gets up in front of God and everybody and goes, "Is this poem about sex or what?" And she goes, "No, I was hungry that day and wanted to write a poem about making a salad." So
that reminds me of like Back to School when Rodney Dangerfield actually hired Kurt Vonnegut to do a paper for him about a Kurt Vonnegut novel, and he ended up failing because the author's intention did not match up with what the theory or the theorists were talking about.
Yeah, so that guy, shout out to Daniel Caderna. He became famous in our class for doing that. Of course, our professors didn't like it showing up, and it was the military professor, so he ended up getting lots of area tours, but he was a legend after that. So, all right, let's wrap this thing up. Let's do some closing thoughts on this movie, and I don't want to give it a rating. Just give it a thumbs up or thumbs down overall, or you can do a thumb in the middle or 3/4 or whatever you want. Mike, let's go to you first.
I gotta go thumb in the middle with this one. Well, I'm glad I watched it. I don't think there's really too much to write home about on this one.
Okay. I think that's very fair, but I will wait to give my rating when it comes to me. Steve, what about you?
He's going Gladiator on us.
Yeah, it's going Gladiator because because it's like the best part of this. I mean, basically everything cool in this movie is Willem Dafoe and Robert Redford and their stuff together. I get why the other stuff is there. I just feel like the pacing in this movie feels really slow. It has this true crime documentary feel to it.
I don't think it was
not it's not my thing. It's the way I would say, and it's I don't think it's bad. I think it's perfectly fine. I think where it shines, it's really, really good. And I will say, as a pure side, that Helen Mirren still looks very good at the age she is in that movie.
Yes.
And there are people that will appreciate that. But is it one of those movies that I'm going to go out of my way to rewatch? Probably not, aside from clips of the stuff that I liked. I mean, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah. It does what it needed to do. It's okay.
For my part, I will say the most interesting part of the movie was sitting here and talking about it with the two of you. So
I will second that.
I think there was a lot. So it's like reading certain poetry or plays that I had to read, or books in school, where the analysis and the discussion of the book was much more interesting than the book itself. It's kind of the same way I felt about this. I'll be honest with you, I was bored at different parts of the movie. Mm-hmm. But then when I stopped and I really started to break it down with you and discuss the movie and the philosophical, implications and all the different things that were going on, it's an interesting thought movie. Will I watch it ever again? I'll be honest with you, I'm probably never going to watch this movie again in my life. Was my life wasted because I spent an hour and a half watching this? No. I think I got a lot out of it. So I think I got to go with you. I'm going to give it a thumb in the middle, slightly pointing up. But, this is not a movie where I'm like, my socks were blown off. I had to go and run, tell everybody about it. it's one of those movies, and this is all due respect to Robert Redford and rest in peace, but it really felt like Robert Redford does a lot of dramatic pieces, and sometimes they really hit with me, and I really enjoy them. The Natural, Butch Cassidy, etc. And sometimes they're just not my cup of tea. And I can appreciate, the acting and the story and everything, and just be like, okay, I watched it. So, but I think that I think I could speak for the three of us when I say that I think we're better for having seen it and talking about it, and it was a good discussion. So,
yeah.
And
awesome.
you're definitely right about this little bit right here. We're talking with you guys was definitely the best part of watching it.
Yeah. And we say that with all due respect. All due respect.
I will say also, it is very interesting that of all the things that I've seen with Redford, at least a couple of them deal with his relationship with death and how he meets it.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I think that Robert Redford, was a very how do I put this? He's like, gosh, I'm trying to think of a past actor I can equate him to. I want to say Jimmy Stewart, but Jimmy Stewart could do some wacky stuff. I mean, Robert Redford, I can't really see him doing like comedy, So there's a certain genre that he fits into. It's almost like he's not perfect, but looks perfect, feels perfect to do some of the other stuff.
I would even say Robert Redford is cool. He has a certain cool about him.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And every character he plays, like Steve mentioned before, has that cool. Even when he plays a bad guy, like he did in the Marvel movies, he's still eminently cool,
Yeah.
So you're just like looking at Fury going, are you really going to kill him? What are we doing here? All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I am going to announce right now that the movie for next week has already been picked out. It was supposed to be the movie for this week. Mike graciously allowed us to put it off to do this Robert Redford tribute for all of you. We will be watching The Hitcher next week. So we will get into that movie because it is officially scary season. That's right. It is going into Halloween, and we are doing horror movies through the end of October. So tune in next week for the Hitcher, and then after that, Steve Sellers will be picking a horror movie for us, and we'll be kicking it full into gear for horror season, Halloween season. So until next time, I want to thank all of you for watching Cinema Crusaders, and on behalf of myself, Mike Donnelly, say goodbye, Mike.
Good night, folks.
And Steve Shaywig Sellers. This has been Cinema Crusaders. Wherever you are, enjoy a good movie this weekend with somebody that you care about, or a nice pet, or heck, just a comfortable blanket. Get some popcorn and go watch yourself some cinema. We are out of here. Bye, everybody.